For me, NFTs are much more about the technology itself and the opportunity that blockchain creates for the artists. And for me, regardless of what the market is doing, well, not regardless, but whether the market is kind of peaking or troughing, for me, it's a really important technology that I think is here to stay.
Welcome to the X11 podcast. In this episode, we sat down with Natasha, the co-founder and creative director of NXT Museum in Amsterdam, to discuss the future of digital art, Web3, and the metaverse. Hey, Natasha, how are you?
I'm good. Very excited to be catching up today.
Me too. I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. I would love for you to give a little bit of an introduction about yourself, if you don't mind.
Yep. So I would love to. Firstly, thank you for having me. It's nice to be following up also on the collaboration that we did earlier, well, last year now, actually. But I'm sure I'll dive into that more later because it was such a profound and exciting collab that we did together. But yeah, I'm Natasha Greenhalgh. I'm co-founder and creative director of NXT Museum, which is a dedicated home for new media art in Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
And it's such a legendary, amazing place. I'm so excited that I had a chance to work with you in the space. So it's so cool. So I would love to start from the beginning. I'd like to hear more about you. So what brought you to the Netherlands and how did you meet Meryl? How did NXT Museum come to be?
Oh, big question. I suppose ultimately NXT Museum came to be because of both Myrtle and I's obsession with the future. We're both a little bit rebellious in nature and obsessed with exploring what is next, I suppose, in creative expression. Me from a more arts angle, Myrtle from a technology angle, both in our studies and training. And I moved to the Netherlands 8 years now. Please don't ask me to start speaking Dutch because embarrassingly, I'm not there yet. But I moved to the Netherlands 8 years ago, originally for a design agency. I worked as a designer for many years and for many big retail brands, designing spaces from, brand experiences for brands such as Alexander McQueen, Burberry, Sephora, and then into PVH, which is Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. And that's where I met Miro. And we were both scheming away on the kind of absolute need for a dedicated home for new media art in the Netherlands, which has such a rich history in new media and digital art, has a lot of incredible education opportunities and universities and schools, really good programs, amazing creators. But for various reasons, there hasn't been a dedicated home for new media in the Netherlands for a while now. And with so many more, I suppose, festivals, events happening that were showcasing incredible works, we really said this is the time that there needs to be a physical place where people can come together, where these works can live on, but also where we can offer a space for people to create together to make sure that we keep innovating in this really exciting, dynamic, creative field.
This is so beautiful. And honestly, I'm really, really impressed with NXT Museum because it really elevates the work, because before that, as a digital artist, I had opportunities to maybe showcase in a festival here and there or kind of a smaller gallery, but having a designated museum space in Amsterdam, it really kind of helps to legitimize digital art in the art world, in my opinion. And I wanted to ask you, so why digital art? Why do you think that digital art is so important? Why does it, how did it win your attention the way that it did?
Very good question. I think digital art for us is one facet of new media, which is a broad, ever evolving term. We're always actually still debating if the word new media, unstable media, time-based media are the right phrases because the tools and the creativity are always evolving so rapidly. But new media ultimately for us is any new creative tool that's using new mediums, including digital technology. And it varies anywhere from digital art, works being created in the metaverse, to AI works, biotechnology, CGI, projection, what else? Projection mapping within spaces. So it's quite a broad term. And the reason for us that it's so exciting is because it's always pushing the boundaries of the tools and different modes of creative expressions. So it's always looking at new ways of telling stories, new ways of creating, new ways of pushing us as a species, and constantly exploring and discovering further. And I think that also for me is why digital art is so exciting, because it's really pushing the way that we think and creating new creative opportunities.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so drawn to, yeah, I guess digital art is a bit of an umbrella term, but I'm so drawn to using technology to create artwork because I just think that it helps us to express ourselves in ways that were just unimaginable in the past. So it's really cool. So I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on Web3. Like, where do you stand when it comes to NFTs? Because there's been a lot of talk about it in the last few years, and some people are like really into it, and some people are still a bit on the fence. So I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, well, it's obviously a very volatile market from a market point of view. But for me, NFTs are much more about the technology itself and the opportunity that blockchain creates for the artists. And for me, regardless of what the market is doing, well, not regardless, but whether the market is kind of peaking or troughing, for me, it's a really important technology that I think is here to stay, for a number of reasons, but primarily the way that I believe it's empowered many artists. It's meant for the first time. I assume a lot of people know what NFTs and blockchain technology does, but in the most simple terms, it has finally meant that new media artists and digital artists can actually make their work unique. And this has been a huge problem for new media artists since new media art has been developed since the 80s. So whether it's video art, whether it's an animation, whether it's performance-based art, whether it's music, but making that artwork unique. So, for example, adding a signature, which you do to a traditional painting, has been nigh on impossible for digital and new media artists. So that for the first time, these artists can make their work unique, which means they can have ownership over their work. They have ownership of the copyright. They can stop it being more easily copied. That's a whole nother big conversation of how much more safe the work is. But in principle, it does make the ownership more clear, which in turn also means that artists can now monetize their work and finally start to make some money from it. And also they own more of that transaction process. And I think that's really incredible to see how the traditional gatekeepers, how that model has shifted. So the relationship between museums and galleries has totally been disrupted, where now it's the artists who have much more control in not only where they're selling their work, but also who is buying their work. So artists can really decide and have a relationship also with the buyers, which I think can also really enrich that relationship with audience and with education as well around works themselves.
Thank you for such a nice detailed explanation. And honestly, so I graduated from art school in 2016 now, and I studied digital art in university, and I've seen the art world change so much since 2016, in terms of like the recognition that digital artists get now as opposed to before. And as you said, digital art has been around since the 80s, like as early as that. But I just think that now, because of Web3 and NFTs, like we get more exposure as well as ownership of our work. And I've heard this from several artists and even galleries that work with digital artists now, that not only is digital art being taken more seriously, but it's also a way for artists to be able to make a living from digital art in a way that maybe painters or sculptors were able to do in the past, and digital artists were not to the same extent. For example, I just from my experience, like a lot of the time, digital artists had to make a living from doing commercial work for brands, which
Yeah.
is really exciting. But, you know, it's not like they could sell
They
their
have
video
the
as
creative freedom to explore conceptually.
exactly. I mean, of course they can, and they can show it in some galleries or museums, but it was a lot harder than for artists who work with traditional media. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that this is changing, that people are starting to be more open-minded about different mediums that it's being used to create art. So this is really cool.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think also the really exciting thing with it being digital is that it also makes the accessibility of these artworks and also then the kind of visibility of the artists much broader as well. You instantly have now a global reach, and because more and more people obviously have technologies in their home, or let's be honest, most people are walking around with a phone, a smartphone in their pocket, which basically means we can have access to art 24/7. So I think that's also really incredible that not only are artists now maybe more empowered because of Web3 to drive their own careers in the directions they want, to be paid more fairly, also to be recognized more, but also the access to these works once they've created. There's the kind of there's an infinite reach now because it can just be accessed more easily online and in our pockets or through various other devices, which I think is also really giving more opportunity for people to connect with digital art, to learn about digital art, to learn about the creators and makers, and really understand the complexity also of the craft. And I think that's also a next for us. What's so important with having a physical space, sorry, to show digital works is you really have the actual physical time and with that space to explain to audience how and why these works are so complex, so rich, and what extensive craft it takes to bring these works to life, and often how much research also goes into realizing a lot of these projects.
that is so true. And so as Next Museum, I notice you also do quite a bit of like panels, and then you have the Next Lab. I believe I saw that that's something. Can you tell
Yeah.
us more about this exciting aspect of Next?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, one aspect is we have exhibitions, and we really focus on. I'm really proud of the majority of the works in these exhibitions are new commissions, because for us it's really important to support new creators or up and coming creators and new collaborations. I'm just waiting for the tram to go by.
Gives
I'm
me
not
time to
sure how much you
cough.
can hear it, but
It's okay. It's not
that's
too bad.
life. Um, Yeah, but for us, if we really want to innovate and we really want to support new talent, it's really equally, or if not more important, to invest time and space for research and creation. So we have, in addition to the exhibition, we have public programming in the form of, for example, Amsterdam dance event, which we can speak about more in a bit, but performances, workshops, talks, and in addition to the public programming, we also then have Next Lab, where we really focus on education, research, and it's a space where we really promote and support not just creation, but also failure and the opportunity to, with that failure, then drive new ways of thinking and new ways of being. And all of this is also part of, if we want to indeed make a space to innovate, we believe it's also really important that we make art and research and the tools also more accessible to a broader audience. And for us, that's not just exhibiting the work, but also giving people a chance to really get hands on in understanding the hows, the whys, the whats, so supplementing the exhibition with talks, with workshops, with presentations is really important to hopefully continue to break down maybe the barriers or the walls that some people find are around art that, in some instances, make art inaccessible to people.
I love that so much, Natasha. I think that It's so important to educate people on the processes and the experimental side of digital art. And I really love what you said about failure, like celebrating failure and learning from it as well as success, because I really see digital art as experimental. It's always experimental because there's constantly new technologies that are being adapted by artists, and we're always just trying to see how we can use it, like what we can create with it. And sometimes maybe things don't work out the way the way we had hoped, but you still get this amazing failure that I'm using failure as like a positive term. It's like a more of a
Yeah,
happy
I agree.
accident.
Yeah, totally. And I think also as part of that, it was making me think when you're saying the creative process, for a lot of digital works, it's quite multidisciplinary and you need a lot of different skills. So I think you need to have this kind of melting testing moments where you have all different experts coming together because you're quite often mixing very different fields, coding, music, maybe more traditional graphic design. Then we also use, for example, a lot of architects to then look at how do you physically bring that into the space. So the nature of this multidisciplinary kind of, I would say, cauldron is that a lot of mistakes happen, but it's often in those, again, mistake doesn't feel like the right word. Let's call them opportunities.
Yeah,
In
I
these
like that.
unknown eventual opportunities that actually the really exciting, developments evolve.
It's so true. I really love that so much. And, and there's so much to be experimented with. And I'm wondering, like, personally, is there a particular technology that you're really excited about right now? Like, for example, metaverse or AI, or is there anything that you're particularly invested in?
I'm very curious where we're going to go with AI when it comes to creativity, in terms of who
Me
owns the
too.
creativity, what are the boundaries, also in terms of who then has control, who has access, and also from a social political angle, I'm very interested in how then AI is then being used in our tools. Let's say, what are the biases that are emerging also from the the AI driven tools that we're using. I don't know if you know the work of Coded Bias. We featured their documentary movies, and Joy is a programmer, and when she was trying to program, every time she sat in front of the camera, it literally wouldn't recognize her because she's a Black African American woman, and typically a lot of the AIs are trained by men and predominantly, well, white men predominantly. So I think it's also really interesting that we're evolving all of these creative tools, but also who really has the access for these tools? What are the inputs that are going in? So I'm very, very curious of how we're going to keep evolving. Well, are we even going to? But I think it's really important to evolve technology and creative tools so that they serve the many and not the few, and so that they create more equality, not less. So I'm really curious how this will continue to evolve. I think there's lots of exciting creative opportunities, but there's also some quite lethal social political challenges and legislations, I think, that hopefully need to start to come into force. So I'm really curious what happens with AI. I'm also very curious what happens with mixed reality, whether that is AR, VR, also, and more and more sophisticated goggles, glasses coming in. I'm really curious of how we start to see that blend continue to happen.
I'm going to quickly pause the interview to share an exciting announcement with you. We just launched our new metaverse, spiritrealm.art, an ever-evolving metaverse and movie where the community decides what happens next. Link in description.
Yeah, I'm so curious too. I think the technology is evolving a lot faster than I personally had anticipated. So it's all just happening so fast, but it's so exciting. A little bit creepy sometimes, but really exciting. And I'm glad you brought up AI, because, this is something that's been on my mind so much lately. And in particular, at first, what I was thinking about AI is like, wow, it has such a mass adoption so quickly because, for example, when electronic music came to be, like a drum machine, it took people some time to recognize it as proper music because it's not a real instrument. But when, at least in North America, but when AI came around, like AI art, so many people just instantly accepted it. And a lot of like the art institutions see it as art. So at first I was really fascinated with the progress of that. But now, especially in the last few weeks, I've been seeing like a really strong backlash against that. I've been seeing a lot of artists in particular sharing their opinion on social media that AI is theft and that it's not real art. And there's been a lot of controversy about it. So I'm just really fascinated by the dialogue that I'm seeing about this new tool.
Yeah, and I think that's also where it actually gets really exciting. The same with NFTs and blockchain is that you have the kind of the hype, and then at the point of the hype, you often get some sort of burst or kind of malfunction or melting point because some
Yeah.
people start to get really critical. And I think that's when it actually gets really exciting because that's when you have to start asking yourself maybe more provocative or challenging questions. And I think in that is then where you then see another burst of innovation start to happen because you kind of the snowball effect of the excitement of a new technology or um, yeah, a new research. Finally, you step back and you have to actually analyze it and go, okay, now where and how do we want to start to direct this? And I think that's when you then really start to see some people bury down and start looking at, okay, now how do we start to evolve this moving forward?
Yeah, it's really so fascinating, and this is a really interesting point in time to observe what happens. And yeah, the controversy about it reveals so much about just people's perception of artwork in general. So I
Yeah.
think it's really fascinating.
I think
And
it for me a little bit goes into the what is, I mean, art is also obviously the finished product, well, the finished item, but to me, art is also is really very much the research and the thinking behind as well. And for me, that's what's interesting with AI is that if you're using it in a way that is expanding your thinking or way of exploration or challenging the way that you may have seen or explored, then I think that's not about copying or AI becoming a fraud or not creative. It's an aid to encourage you to think differently, to create differently, or to explore differently. And that aspect I think is really interesting.
that's such a good point. You know, sometimes it's really great to be challenged like this because it breeds creativity and new ideas of what art is, and you know, how do we express ourselves. Like I actually sometimes I view NFTs and AI as a part of one category that's some people love it, other people hate it. And
Yeah,
so many people have such strong opinions on these technologies, but I personally see them as tools. They're just new tools that challenge
exactly.
you. Yeah, they just challenge artists to think about how they can present their work. And they're not really there to, you know, make it or break it. They're just new tools, new ideas of how we can rethink about what art is today.
Yeah. And the world around us, a new way to look at the world around us as well.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm always just so curious to see what technology comes next. You know, how can we use it to be creative? Yeah. And I wanted to, so speaking of that, I wanted to ask you about Amsterdam Dance Event. So that was such an
One of my
epic,
favorite topics.
I would love to hear all about it. It's just so cool. Can you tell us a bit about what it is in a nutshell?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a little bit of, well, Amsterdam Dance Event is one of the largest dance events in Europe that happens throughout the city of Amsterdam. And it takes over 5 days, but for the entire month, there's lots of events going on. And all electronic, all different genres of electronic dance music basically come and explode throughout the city. And every single space or non space becomes a place to come together to dance and to unite for music. So that's Amsterdam Dance Event wider. We did our first event in 2020. We had just opened in the summer. We went into another lockdown, and we were determined to find a way to still bring some sort of joy and escapism and movement to people's homes throughout the lockdown. So we started by doing a live streaming first year, By second year, we found out we could have 300 people in the space. So we did a residency with 4 artists. And by this year, we could finally have a maximum number of dancing, sweaty people. So we created a monstrous residency with 22 creatives,
Wow.
10 artists, 10 visual artists, and 12 sound artists. And over the course of 4 or 5 months, depending on the duos, visual artists and sound artists paired up to create an audio visual feast, I would say, which was brought to life physically in NXT Museum. So we have a large projection space, and it's a big limbo, 340 square meters of projection space, where the artwork is projected. And within the artwork is the DJ booth, who is playing live, and then all of the dancers, all the audience basically dance around the DJ, who is inside the projection space. So you kind of almost have this inception moment where you're dancing inside a digital artwork with the music all around you, and everyone's just getting hot and sweaty on a dance floor while being kind of swept up in digital art.
I love that so much, just being hot and sweaty in your physical body, but at the same time, like participating in this immersive experience where you're just inside of a digital artwork. It's so cool.
Yeah, and it's so exciting as well to see kind of the magic that evolves when you bring together all these different people from all over the world with different backgrounds. And I think that it's always the beautiful nature of a residency is it's always a little bit kind of risky in terms of the way that people come together. But for us, that's what made it really exciting. And it was just delicious to see how different artists started to reinterpret their practice because they were also being paired up with unexpected collaborators.
It's always such a fun challenge to create artwork when you're also thinking about a collaborator and maybe one that you've never met or talked to before.
Because how did you find that?
I really loved it, to be honest, because personally, when I first started as a 3D artist, music videos were my bread and butter for years. So I'm pretty used to being contacted by musicians who maybe I've never met before. And then, so when I do visuals, I have to think about like, how do I represent my personal artwork, but also how do I represent this other artist? But this is an audio artist. So maybe they don't use the same visual language that I use to tell their story, but I have to challenge myself and think about like, how do I use my visual language to talk to them and their audience. So it's always a really fun challenge. And when I created a piece with Sassy, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, Sassy, they were so amazing to work with. We just clicked right away because I love their music. I haven't heard it prior to being paired up with them, but I heard their music. I loved it. And then I told them about some of my inspirations, and then they were like, oh my gosh, I'm also inspired by dancing demons and this kind of hellish visual, which is what I did for NXT Museum, in case people don't know the context. But it was just such a match made in heaven. So I had a great experience doing that. I don't know, but I bet that most artists would find this a really fun challenge. I really think so. So yeah, I think it was really fun, and I'm curious to know, like, how did NXT Museum get involved with this?
Well, for us, we've always focused on the intersection of music, technology, and art and science. So from the conception of dreaming about NXT Museum, music has always played an integral part of everything we do. It comes very high throughout the exhibition, and we've done quite a few public programs that focus on performance. So from the moment we had the building, to be honest, we were knocking on the door of ADE and scheming with them, because they're also very excited to look at how can we find new ways to bring new audience also into music, and how can we find new ways to build new communities as well around electronic music. So because of the kind of more community focus that we have, and really looking at new collaborations, they were keen to work together. So from 2020, we'd set up the plans to create this residency, and each year it's just kind of evolved and blossomed or bloomed, and hopefully it's something that we will just keep building on for the years to come.
I mean, it makes so much sense. It's just such a perfect space for this. So I'm really, really happy um, that this is a part of your programming. And I always thought that, like, I always wanted my art to be entertaining and engaging, and like combining visuals with music in like an immersive space like this is like the ultimate combination, in my opinion. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah. It's also, I think, for a lot of people, for Amsterdam Dance Event, for those that are maybe previously thought, okay, electronic music is not for me, it's also a really nice way for people to also explore a genre in a new way. You don't necessarily mean, I love going to a club until 7 in the morning and hiding away in a dark hole, but I think it's really nice to show that there are many ways in which you can explore this. And also this year, which we also did with you, we did the first live minting within the space, which for us was a really nice experiment and kind of diving deeper further into Web3 and really looking at how can we give people again the opportunity to kind of take home these memories. Because in previous years, obviously everyone's always standing there with their camera, but now with this year's event, you could actually live mint the works as you were watching them or dancing within them, and people could actually take home as an NFT a part of the night, a part of the artwork, and also it was something that we did for free because for us the main focus is on how do we create a community around what is happening and a shared moment.
I really, really love this live minting idea. I think it's so much fun. And just as you said, instead of trying to pull out your phone and take photos of what's going on all the time, people can just be in the moment and then mint their favorite part of the performance and then just have it with them forever. I think this is so fun, and it's such a exciting and innovative way to capture the moment and utilize Web3.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
really
really
hope,
cool.
to be honest, that this is something that starts to expand further as we kind of go on into the year, using technology in this way as a way to capture also physical moments and to share those.
It's so nice because honestly, I would definitely buy an NFT that's a live mint from a concert that I saw, like maybe my favorite moment, because, like recording it with your phone while you're dancing and screaming, it doesn't really work. Believe me, I tried many times. So this is like a much better, cleaner way to kind of get the same result. So it's so exciting. And I wanted to ask you, because we're kind of running out of time now, but I really wanted to know, like, what are your hopes for next museum? Like, you've done so many exciting projects. It's just such an epic space. So how do you see it in the future or this year? What are you hoping to accomplish with next in this new year?
So we started to delve into virtual gallery. So I'm really excited and curious to keep evolving that and looking at how we can start to bring other aspects of the museum further into the ether, I suppose. And also as part of that, we've been researching for the last couple of years, what does it mean to collect and archive new media and digital art? And I think now with Web3 and blockchain technology, we're in a really strong position to find more exciting ways to really start to archive. And I'm really curious how we can start to then take these digital archives and kind of bring them to life in a much more visual way in Web3 or in virtual galleries. So that for us is super exciting. And obviously, just as ever, continuing to have these unexpected, exciting collaborations as we venture into our next exhibition and public program is always really exciting.
It's really exciting and so much to look forward to. I really just can't wait to see all the cool stuff you come out with next.
Thank you. And thank you for also making the programming so rich, because I think it's working with such incredible talent and artists and visionaries that makes Next Museum what it is. So it's all for us, all about these collaborations and making
Oh,
this really incredible community.
It was a dream come true. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Natasha.